from Dairyland Frights, and we are tonight going live. At least we are trying to do a live stream. We would do our best, Rissa and I, because I have a great guest with me, Rissa from Tea and Smoke. You have seen her on the podcast before. Because I love her and she does so many great things. She did Superstitions, which was an awesome show, by the way. We had a lot of people ask why about going under a ladder. Why did they have to back? I think it was you said walk backwards from it,
Yeah,
or there was something that you had to do, right?
right,
There
right.
was something. Yeah.
It's a superstition. It's hard to say why.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just one of those it's just one of those things that just kind of work out the way it does is kind of fun, and hopefully there's no harmful to people and stuff like that if they did try to walk backwards
Yeah,
under a ladder.
it does not sound like a safe idea, John, to be totally honest with you. Especially if there's a human on the ladder, I would not suggest it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just be careful out there, folks, because, one of the biggest things that I see is people, doing things, already dumb things. We don't want to do any more dumb things that hurt themselves and, go from there. So tonight, I'm really excited because we're going to go through, in this hour, we're going to go through like some Halloween lore.
Hmm.
We're going to go through, hopefully, we'll get some questions here. If not, you guys can follow up, dairylandfrights at gmail.com or go to Tea and Smoke by Rissa, excuse me, her website. Reach out to her on Instagram or anything you want to. Hopefully, you got Instagram. What else do you have, Rissa, as far
I
as we can reach
have
out to you?
Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
There you go. So plenty of things you guys can reach out to. So we're gonna try it. Like I said, we'll give it our best. But I had to have Arissa back on because it's the spooky season, and she
That's
has some
right.
great things to talk about, especially with Halloween lore. And also, we'll see if we get to a live reading. Great. If we can do some, if people want to do that. If not, I'll have Rissa back. Trust me, I'll get her back. We'll figure something out here. So, Rissa, if you want to take it away, what would you like to start with tonight?
You asked me to talk about Halloween lore, but I thought it might be fun to first reflect on why we love Halloween. Especially Americans just absolutely love it. And it is the holiday people spend as almost as much money on as Christmas. And it's actually, I was looking up the data today. The Americans are expected this year to spend close to $10 billion on Halloween. That includes
Wow.
candy, costumes, decor, going to haunted events, scary like the scary haunted hay rides, stuff like that, as well as parties. And I found that number to be amazing. To be quite honest with you, that's a
Yeah.
lot of money, and it just seems like Americans absolutely love it. And yet, it's almost like, yes, I love Halloween, and yet I see so many people that have this sort of love hate relationship with it, almost like they love it and it's fun, but
Hmm.
also there's this fear factor. There's this
Hmm.
frightening part of it. And there's also this sort of mysterious side where, maybe people don't quite understand it, or they're told by someone that Halloween is really about the devil. And I'm here to actually say that's just not true. And
Right.
the history tells us that Halloween's about a lot of things, but not that. And it's so interesting the way everybody really has this dark side. And the idea of dressing up in a costume or putting a skeleton on your front lawn can kind of like scratch that itch that, people have this darkness in them. And this is the one time a year it feels like it's okay to acknowledge it.
Absolutely. And it's too to have fun with it and everything is one of the main things you want to do, right?
I
You want to
agree.
have fun. And get scared. Sure, we'll get scared, but also just have fun with it, right? You don't want to. You don't. I mean, you want to be scared, but you don't want to like hurt anybody. Luckily, there's never been, hopefully, anyone where I did an urban legend. Really quick, Rissa. about if anyone's been like finding like needles or razor blades in their candy or whatever. It turns out not really, not a big
No,
thing.
we know
No.
back in 1984 there was an incident in California where there was one Halloween candy killer, and he was publicly executed. So that's over. Um, and there have been two recorded incidents in the United States of children getting sick and dying after trick or treat, but in both
Mm,
cases, the parents were responsible. It was nothing to do with the trick or treat. So, I mean, that's very unfortunate and sad. Nobody wants to hear that, but it was nothing to do with the candy. So, I mean, obviously,
right.
always use common sense out there. The one thing that does happen on trick or treat, traffic accidents.
Really?
When I was also doing my research today, one of the most dangerous parts about trick or treating is drivers who aren't paying attention and it's dark, and
Mm,
children and their guardians or parents that are out with them are not brightly marked because they're dressed like Dracula or something Batman, and it's very dark, and drivers simply don't see them, and the people are having fun and laughing and they're not paying attention, and unfortunately that is one of the true hazards of trick-or-treating.
yeah. And that's kind of a shame because, that I guess when you go out to, like I said, be safe, you walk in groups. I know nobody wants to wear that reflective tape,
No, nobody wants that, but
but
it's not a terrible idea. And
right.
or just have carry flashlights, carry
Yeah,
bright orange pumpkins, do something that's eye-catching to a driver. It's
absolutely.
it's worth it to compromise your spooky integrity for the costume to just to be safe, I think. And I'm
Absolutely.
always spooky, so
By the way, I would love to see the inside of your house or your
ah,
apartment or wherever, you live to see how spooky it is. Is it really spooky or are you
it's
pretty low key?
mostly books, John.
Oh, all right. I thought
I
maybe you'd have something else.
I'm actually very nerdy. I mean, I do have a skull sitting around. I do have some spooky art and things like that, but I'm actually ridiculously well organized. And I have a lot of books. Nobody who knows me would be surprised to hear that. I have tons and tons of books, and books are one of the great passions of my life. So that's why I know so much
Mm.
random stuff. I'm always learning.
I love that. I love that. And that's one of the biggest things too about Halloween. You can kind of learn how it started and how
Hmm.
it went about and everything because I think
Absolutely.
and that's something we'll kind of talk a little bit, right? Kind of
Yeah,
a little bit about
absolutely.
Halloween lore. Yeah. So if you want
Oh
to get
yeah,
started on that would be awesome.
yeah, I also wanted to reflect quickly. I think one of the best parts about Halloween is having our own individual traditions. Like we're going to talk about a lot of things tonight. I mean, hopefully we get to like jack-o'-lanterns and trick-or-treating and
Mm,
all of that. But I
right.
also want to say that these customs have changed over time. So for your listeners and their families and friends, I think that what's important is the traditions you create together. When I was
Hmm.
growing up, we would always go trick or treating, and I had a pillowcase back then. That was what we used. And right? Do you remember that? Does anybody remember that but me?
the the
The pillowcase
pillowcase.
that you
Yes,
drew
I
on.
actually had someone say they remember they had a pillowcase. Yes.
Yep,
So,
I had a pillowcase,
yeah.
and the the beauty of it was that afterwards, my mom always made this wonderful warm minestrone soup, and it would like simmer all day, and it would be
Mm.
so exciting to finally get to the dinner part of the night. And then my dad used to take us out. And sometimes it would just be we would sit by the fireplace. Other times we would get in the
Yeah.
car. It really, I guess, depended on how tired he was. Even if it was a school night, we would hear ghost stories, and he usually told stories about this area, and they're the stories that I fell in love with as a storyteller. So I remember all these ghost stories from my childhood, and I'm a ghost tour guide now, so I tell some of them, but it all
Absolutely.
started for me as part of a Halloween tradition in my family. And, I always look forward to giving out candy. I always look forward to making my mom's soup. and it's a small tradition, but it's my family's, and I it will always be important to me. So I feel like when we think about Halloween, it can have these kinds of pieces that are personalized.
Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just a really quick story. One of the funniest things that ever happened when I used to take my kids out. They're too old to do it now. I guess I'm never too old, but whatever. But one of the things, Rissa, was there was this really nice couple that made these homemade apple cider donuts and homemade apple cider, and they had it for everybody, and nobody was taking it because you're told if it's not in a wrapper, if it's
Don't take
not
it.
sealed right,
Yep.
you shouldn't do it because you don't know if these people, you don't know them. And so I went up to these poor people, and I went up there and I said, well, if I'm going to die by a donut, there's worse ways to go. And I had the donut. I'm still here. It was delicious. My kids had some too, and it was awesome. So there you go. I mean, take a
Yeah.
chance. I don't know.
When I was growing up, there was a woman down the street who always made those homemade popcorn balls, and I always ate them. She was
Right?
our neighbor. She was great, and
Yeah.
I mean, she's long since passed, but I'll never forget them. And that was a lot of work. So are apple cider
Right.
donuts. That's a lot of
Yeah.
work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it would have been pretty easy for the cops to figure out, right?
Right. I would think so. I would
They'd
think
be
that you would
like,
definitely be putting a target on yourself.
yeah,
Pretty big
absolutely.
one.
It would, yeah, it would have been pretty easy. So I'm like laughing at that. I just think that's so funny.
Yeah.
And yeah, we used to do garbage bags, by the way. My mom would give me
Oh.
a garbage bag. Not a big one, not one of those big black ones, but she would give me like a smaller one. And boy, would I fill that one up. Woo! That was a crazy night of sugar highs and stomach
Oh
aches.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, let's go back in time now, way past when we were kids, and we'll go back to very ancient Ireland. So historians disagree about when Samhain, which is spelled like, do I have it right side up? This is a book about Samhain.
Hmm.
It's Samhain. It looks like it should be pronounced Samhain, but it's Samhain. This was an old Celtic fire festival, and it sort of marked the end of the light season and introduced the dark time. This is one of the origins of Halloween. And at this time, this was the end of the harvest. This is when all the crops would come in. They would. There were so many traditions associated with Samhain. We could talk for that over an hour just about that. But Halloween has a lot of its roots in this Irish tradition, but that's not all. There's also Roman roots and Christian roots in the Halloween we have now. Even the name Halloween came from the Christian church, from All Hallows Tide or All Hallows Eve, which now has kind of been changed into All Souls Day on November 2nd.
Hmm.
But Romans also contributed to the holiday, the holiday we think of as Halloween. They had a celebration in the fall of Pomona, the apple goddess,
Hmm.
and of course, this is also a harvest festival, but all over Europe, harvesting apples and closing down the orchard for the winter was kind of a really big part of the autumn. A really,
Hmm.
those orchards were really, really critical for them to have apples, to have apple cider. I don't think they made apple cider donuts yet, but you never know.
Yeah.
Probably something. And all of the things that they needed that winter food for, all those like really hard foods that kept through the winter. Like the root vegetables, potatoes, things like that. Apples were also a hard fruit that we'd keep through the winter. So all of these different things sort of coalesce.
Hmm.
And without getting into a ridiculous amount of detail that will suck up all of our time, all of these things contribute to what we now think of as Halloween. There is a
Hmm.
harvest festival. There is celebration of ancestors. There is celebration of the change of season. There is
Hmm.
celebration of all things dead. But then there's also this element of fear and mystery. All of them have this included, and
Hmm.
witches were a really big part of old Halloween traditions because people were afraid of them. I know. I
Hmm.
think we might have talked like a tiny bit
Yeah.
here and there about witches before,
A little bit.
um,
Yeah.
but they're definitely part of the Samhain and the fear of the churches and all of these things. Again, witches were made into bad guys, bad ladies,
Mm.
if you will. And
Yeah.
Halloween became part of that. Evidently, during Halloween was when all of the witches would really be in close contact with the devil. And there was all this fear of spells being cast. So
Mm.
things would happen like putting iron above the door so that, the witches and or the devil couldn't get in. But there's so many other complexities to these old traditions, such as the spirit world being closer. And I know that we have on our wish list here to talk a little bit more about the thin time and what that means. But this was considered to be a thin time when the spirit world was closer. Now, for the most part, the spirit world is ancestors and positive visitors, but they still need an offering. You still have to leave something for them, right? And this
Right.
is a tradition that still goes on in many, many parts of the world. China has the Hungry Ghost Festival that happens in July. Throughout Mexico and other parts of Central and South America, we have Dia de las Muertas. And in all of these cultures, it is normal to leave an offering for the dead during the thin time when their spirits return. Now, in both of those instances, the offerings are different. In the Asian cultures, they leave not just food but also ghost money, and in the Central American and South American cultures, there's more food, but also festivity and sort of this lightness, almost a celebration of the return of their ancestors and family and from the spirit side. So Halloween has all of that too.
Mm.
So it's really difficult. Very few historians are going to say this is the origin point. There are many. There are many things that turned into our Halloween,
Mm.
and going forward, it changed so much when it came to America. Uh, the American Halloween is unique, and it's definitely kind of a fun thing to start examining it in terms of the American Halloween, which is what I'm guessing most of your listeners are familiar with.
Right.
So I think the ultimate symbol of Halloween in America is probably the jack o' lantern. And I don't
Mm.
have one with me, but I do have this guy. I did get this little pumpkin so that I could at least have a pumpkin. Best intentions. I was like, oh, I'll get a jack o' lantern card. Didn't happen, but I
Yeah.
got this. So this is called a Jack Be Little. So the jack o' lantern is a great story to share. So people have carved vegetables and fruits for a long time, probably before history. But the jack o' lantern specifically was from Ireland. It starts with a fellow that the legend is called Stingy Jack. So Stingy Jack
Mm.
was just kind of not an awesome guy. um he wasn't. He was a greedy fellow. He was a bit of a heavy
Mm.
drinker. He had all sorts of dissipated habits, and generally speaking, a really selfish person who
Mm.
just didn't really want to make good in the world at all. In fact, he was such a bad person that the devil heard about him, and the
Oh.
devil decided it was time to come and collect Stingy Jack. And when the devil arrives, apparently Stingy Jack is such a good manipulator that he convinces the devil to show off. And he has the devil turn into a coin. And then he puts the coin in his
Oh.
pocket next to a crucifix so that the
Okay.
devil can't turn back into his form.
Mm.
At this juncture, he makes a deal with the devil and says, I need another year to settle my affairs. Don't take me yet. And the devil graciously agrees. A year goes by, and the devil returns to claim Stingy Jack.
Mm.
Once again, Stingy Jack, the excellent manipulator, convinces the devil. He's like, "Can I have one last wish, please? I just one more thing." And the devil's like, "All right, whatever it is, let's do it." He says, "Can I have an apple?" So the devil goes to the tree to grab the apple, and somehow Stingy Jack traps him again. The devil gives up on him. But when it comes time for Stingy Jack to die a natural death, the devil won't take him in hell. and they won't take him in heaven because he was just
Hmm.
a terrible human. So, Stingy Jack is a spirit trapped to walk the earth forever, like as a ghost.
Hmm.
And the devil crosses paths with him again and offers him one small gift, a coal that will stay lit to light his way. The story is then that Stingy Jack carved a radish. This was the original jack o' lantern. Carves a radish and puts the coal in it and uses it to light his way as he walks the earth, you know, forever haunting.
Hmm.
Now, radishes are not the easiest thing to carve.
No.
Turnips, radishes, all of these kinds of hard vegetables. There are variations where the turnip is what is used by Stingy Jack. Some people say a potato. Basically, the vegetables that grew in Ireland are what's at play here. And turnip, it, none of these things are quite what we think of when we say jack o' lantern, right? He
Right.
became Jack of the Lantern. And when the
Oh.
story came to America with immigrants, they adopted an American vegetable, fruit. Is it a fruit? I think it's a fruit. They adopted an American fruit, the pumpkin.
Right.
Pumpkins were plentiful here. Natives grew them, and they were way easier to carve. And honestly, I just think they look way cooler. So that
Yeah.
is how, yeah, that is how the pumpkin took root. The pumpkin became solidified in 1820 when Washington Irving wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
In The
So
Legend
let
of
me ask this
Sleepy,
question, quick
yeah,
question, Rissa.
yeah.
The they ask like like why not like the squash? I don't know if they mean like the squash, but they're
Well,
asking like
a
why
pumpkin
we
is technically a squash. It is in the
oh
squash
okay.
family. They are
Maybe
botanically
that's what they
related.
mean. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. I imagine that what we think of as a pumpkin probably looked different in the 1400s and 1500s when colonists first arrived here. I
Mm,
can't I can't say for sure what they look like. I don't think anybody knows. But they
right.
probably didn't really look exactly like this.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. It probably it could have been white.
it
It
could
could
have
have
been
been
or
yeah,
green or yellow.
green or yellow,
Sometimes they're
right?
spotty, and I
Yeah.
actually think they're all really beautiful. A lot of times if you go to a pumpkin or a pumpkin patch or an orchard, they will have what they call heirloom pumpkins and squashes, and they're all different shapes and colors and textures, and they're actually, I think they're delightful. And so maybe one of those is what the Americans they switched to when they came. But in Ireland, they didn't have squash. That was an American thing. That is a North American plant.
Okay.
It is native here, not there. I mean, they have them now because, imported, but
Yeah.
not back then. So,
Awesome.
The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow is the most famous American ghost story. It is not the most famous ghost story, but it is the most famous American one. And
Right.
it is set at Halloween. It is extra spooky. It is extra fun. And if any of your listeners are wondering, Sleepy Hollow, New York is a wonderful place to visit. The old bridge is not there, but they do have a replica, and they have statues of the headless horseman, and you can see the graves of the characters, like because they were all based on real people. So in the book, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, when the schoolmaster wakes up, Ichabod Crane, or I'm sorry, when he disappears, they find a smashed pumpkin next to where he fell off his horse. This solidifies the pumpkin in Halloween lore in America forever. It is like, we're done. We love the pumpkin, and it's going to be
Yeah.
part of America's Halloween. From there on out, people included Halloweens as their jack o' lantern. Now, in the Washington Irving short story, it does not necessarily say that it was a carved jack o' lantern, but that's how everybody imagines it. I know when I read it, that's how I imagined it. And
Yeah.
that's how it's portrayed in every single movie, whether you're looking at the Disney version or the Tim Burton version, it's a jack o' lantern. So
Yeah.
that is what we all see. And when people read that in 1820, that's what they saw too.
Someone has a question.
Yeah.
Someone asked, "Have you seen the TV show Sleepy Hollow?"
I've heard about it. I don't have every streaming channel, unfortunately,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
have not gotten to see it yet. But I hope to.
So I have seen it to this. I can answer that question. So in Sleepy Hollow, it is Arissa. It is set in Wow, it was made years ago, but it's set in modern day.
Uh
And
huh.
Ichabod Crane comes back. I don't know how he comes back through a portal or something, and he's looking for the killer, his killer, and he kind of like joins the police force. It's a very unusual show. It made about 3 or 4 seasons. It's a fun show. It's you got to suspend disbelief. As you're a very educated woman. You might watch it and go, "Oh, come on," but you know what I mean. It's a TV show. You got to have a little fun
Oh
with
yeah.
it.
Oh,
So
yeah. It sounds entertaining, and I love things
yeah,
that are entertaining. It sounds like a creative take on an old story.
yeah, it really is. The first season I would highly recommend if you get a streaming channel or go over to a friend's house or someone just offers to have a Sleepy Hollow party.
Right.
You can go over and watch the first season. I highly recommend it. It's interesting. At least they're trying to do something original, right?
Oh yeah, I'm all for it. But
Yeah.
Washington Irving did not do something original. He did not write the first Headless Horseman story. And I have to admit, I was a little bit heartbroken when I found out
Hmm.
that he sort of swiped the Irish story of the Dullahan. So Washington Irving never said that he did this. However, he traveled through that part of the world extensively. So it's very likely that he heard the story of the Dullahan, which
Hmm.
is the headless horseman of Irish folklore, which way
Hmm.
predates the legend of Sleepy Hollow. So the Dullahan was a horseman, and he carried his head with him, unlike Washington Irving's. And sometimes he was even portrayed as pulling a carriage made of bones and whipping his horses with a spine. It's very dark. It's a very spooky
Hmm.
story. And
Yeah.
if you saw him, he was coming for you. It meant that you were going to die.
Yeah.
So the Legend of Sleepy Hollow is a little different, but the
Yeah.
idea of a headless horseman, probably first Irish, the Dullahan.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's
That
it's a
that's something I
great
never knew.
it's a great thing to look up. I think it's actually scarier than Sleepy Hollow.
Hmm.
Sleepy Hollow is
Yeah.
a good scary story. It's a good scary story.
It really is. The kids don't read it. My kids don't read it or did not read it in school, but I did read it, and I kind of I went back last year and was kind of rereading, and then I figured, oh, I know why kids are not reading this. Headless Horseman. We're kind of in a day and age with our kids that maybe we better not say kind of scare them a little bit. But okay, that's just my 5 cents, 2 cents, whatever.
I loved it as a kid.
Yeah, so did I.
I thought it was great, and I do remember Disney made it. They did an
Right.
animated version,
Yes.
and it's a little tamer than the Tim Burton version for sure.
Hmm.
But I don't know if the folks listening have seen the two of them together are interesting to watch back to back and compare how they interpret the
Yeah.
story. But
So we did. So
go
we
ahead.
did get a quick message from one of our listeners. They said yes, they watched the Disney version, they read the book, and they said they are fine. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, I think they're fine too.
yeah,
And
good,
I
yeah.
think the Disney version is appropriate for kids.
Hmm.
And it's a great introduction to something that might make them want to read more later, and I'm all for that.
Hmm. Absolutely. And that it's something when you're reading books and stuff. A lot of people want to read the Stephen King, Clive Barker.
Right.
Some of the guys come out later, and there's nothing wrong with that. The Shining still scares me when I read the
It's a
book.
it's a scary story.
Black Tower, I have not got through. I'll be honest, Rissa. I haven't got through the Black Tower, Stephen King, but I've read Shining. Um, Oh, a couple of his newer ones I've read, and I'm drawing a blank right now. Cell. He did one about a cell phone that
Oh,
people
I
listen to the cell
loved that. I
phone.
read that as well. The cell phone
Yeah,
that was ringing you and after the man's
yeah.
death.
And then you just go
That was a
flip out,
fantastic,
and yeah.
fantastic. It
Uh,
was a novella, but yeah, it was great.
right. But like Rissa and I love history. I highly recommend go back and read. I get some of the prose and some of the language is a little flowery, but that's the way they talk.
It's
Just
different.
kind of go with it. I just think you'll get a lot out of it, especially if you love history or you're just looking for something to be a little different because you've read Stephen King It or The Shining a million times, and you're like, oh, well, I'll read something else.
We know what we think of as horror actually came from the Victorian era. And
Right.
that's when all the Gothic writing started.
Mm,
That's when we got Frankenstein. That's when we got Dracula. That's when we got
right.
Edgar Allan Poe. All of these things
Poe's my
started
boy.
then.
Yeah.
And that is sort of when the familiarity with being entertained by something horrific was normalized by the
Yeah.
writers at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, it
Poe.
is. When you look at even Edgar Allan Poe,
Yeah.
the language is different for
Yeah.
sure, but it's still good storytelling.
Poe is my favorite author, by the way, Rissa.
Oh,
That gives
excellent!
you
I'm glad to hear that.
gets into my mind. I always like because he's very creative, and they not to get off tangent here because I know we only have an hour, but they did the House Fall of the House of Usher, a modern tale
Yes,
of it on Netflix.
I thought it
I
was
highly,
excellent.
yeah, I highly recommend around some spooky things you're thinking about, maybe watching, and you're like put it off. It's a great series. You can't go wrong, right? So, yeah,
No, I agree, and I thought the way they modernized the stories really kept
yes,
with Poe's vision. Like
correct,
they modernized them and they made them in the real world, and there were cell phones and computers and stuff like that. But
correct.
the way they portrayed Poe's storytelling was
Yeah.
true to his style.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you're a
Yeah.
fan, a mega fan like I am, and you want to go to be like, oh, what did they do now? Did Hollywood destroy Poe again?
No, no, they
No,
did a great
they did a
job.
nice job. They did a
They
great
did a
job. So
fantastic job. I
absolutely check
absolutely
that
agree.
out.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, we did jump away from pumpkins, but I did want to go
Yeah.
back
Get back to
and
pumpkins.
talk about how, just briefly, I love food as well.
Oh,
And the pumpkin pie is actually a true American dessert. People always say, as American as apple pie, but apple pie is actually European.
oh,
I've always had a question about that. I'm like, who started who started that?
sure.
Because colonists came over knowing how to make pie, and they had
Mm,
apples in Europe, so there were already apple tarts and apple strudels and all kinds of apple desserts and pastries that people already made. But apple pie, I'm sorry, pumpkin pie only became a thing once they got here and got pumpkins. And then they applied the same techniques of sweetening and using a crust. So I wanted to share that with your listeners that this wonderful tradition that comes out, or my family always had pumpkin pie around Halloween. And then all the way through,
yes.
the holidays, pumpkin pie is just such a fantastic thing to eat
I
all the
know,
time,
right?
right? I yeah, I'm always ready for a piece of pumpkin pie. But that said, the first pumpkin pie recipe wasn't even published
Mm,
until, let's see, I wrote it down here. The Complete Housewife in 1742. So that's pretty recently in time. And that it was about putting milk, sugar, and spices with pumpkin in a crust. So
mm.
this is a truly American pie. So, every Halloween you could be as American as pumpkin pie.
Love it. I love that. Yeah, see, that's something again I don't know. That's why we have you on the show. We're breaking traditions and breaking, people's ideas of what's American, what's not, and what's. I love it. It's great.
Well, I'm all here for the apple pie. So, I mean, I don't want to upset anybody if that's their favorite. I also love apple pie, and I love picking apples, and I love all the apple traditions. And I actually love apples link to Halloween.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned earlier that our Roman festival with Pomona, the goddess of the orchard, apples have always been a part of this time of year. It's when they're ripe. It's when one of the things they've always celebrated with. You know, growing up, I think a few times I actually bobbed for apples, and it's not as fun as it
Right.
looks. It's just not.
No. Yeah. I have to agree. You get water up your nose, and
That was what I didn't expect. I was
yeah,
messy. I was sloppy.
yeah,
Yeah, I started thinking how many other people's drool is in here besides
you're
mine.
right.
You know,
Yeah. Yuck.
but all of those things are real.
Oh,
Uh,
quick question. Quick question.
yep.
Do you like whipped cream on your pumpkin pie?
You know,
Everybody wants to know.
I don't actually.
What?
I eat it straight out of the fridge. I cut a piece out of the
Mm,
out of the
okay.
container, and I usually eat it straight with my hand standing in front of the fridge.
Oh, well, now we have insight on how she eats, people. I thought you were dainty. I thought you were a little fork and you're like
Who said that?
I said that, but I am wrong, obviously.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to disappoint you.
Uh, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
It is one of my true favorite desserts, and that's one of the reasons I love talking about it this time of year. I love I love how it's like sweet and savory together, and I can still feel like I'm eating a dessert, but it's not
Yeah.
totally
So,
unhealthy. So,
so
yeah,
Rissa,
I'm
I
ravenous
know
with a pumpkin
pumpkin
pie.
pie is awesome and everything, but this is a really weird question.
Let's hear it.
That says, wasn't there pumpkin pie at McDonald's? I don't know. Should we even answer that one? I don't.
I would
Somebody,
honestly have to look it up. I don't know. There's a piece of history, food history I don't know.
I have no
I
idea.
know that they always have the apple
Sorry.
pies at
Yeah.
McDonald's.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely have to seek that answer out.
Yeah. They got me. Yeah. One of our listeners said they're pretty sure they had pumpkin pie at McDonald's.
It's very possible.
I
Like I said,
guess it
seasonal
could be a
offering.
regional.
Like
Could
they
be a
have a
regional
Shamrock
thing.
Shake in every October, not
Yeah.
October, every March they have the Shamrock Shake. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Could have been a regional thing.
Mm.
I don't. Sure. Okay. All right. Anything else on pumpkin pies that people should know other than you do not like whipped cream and you eat in front of the refrigerator using your hands?
I think that's probably good for now. That's probably
And
good.
apple pie is European, folks.
It
If you
is.
didn't get that,
It is.
yeah, I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah, apple pie came from Europe. Apples were already part of the Samhain and All Hallows Eve traditions when they came to America. Bobbing for apples kind of evolved from the Samhain festivals, though. It didn't start that way, but apples have always been part of this time of year and the celebrations. I did mention the Pomona celebration in Rome, but in Ireland, apples would be used for divination. So, the way this worked, if you wanted to know who you were going to marry, you would peel the apple, and there's variations on this, so I'll tell a few. You would peel the apple in one piece. This was a really critical part. So you had to have a very steady hand and a lot of patience as you were peeling the apple. And then you would throw the peel over your shoulder and eat the rest of the apple. Now, whose ever initial that it looked like it fell in, that's the person that uh, the spirit world was saying was going to be your partner. The other variation on this is newer, when mirrors came into the picture. Mirrors didn't
Hmm.
become common until into the 1800s because they were too expensive before that. People just didn't have them. They were made of like solid silver. So when mirrors became more common, you would do this whole routine, and then you would throw the peel, and instead of looking for the initials, you gaze into the mirror by candlelight, and
Hmm.
evidently by this scrying process, that person's face would be revealed to you. Now, I will honestly tell you, I've never tried this. I have no idea. But the bobbing for apples, old story, is that whoever got the first apple out, now, historically, you'd all go in together, not one at a time, like I did. You'd all go in together, and the first person to pull an apple out would be the first person to get married. So
Oh, by the way, Pat says, I don't know if you know her,
I do know
but she's
Pat.
oh, okay. Because everyone else is just using numbers and stuff. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
but Pat actually is on, and she said Scotland too, Rissa, and she has a little smiley face.
that's true. She's completely right. She's completely right. Scotland too. I have Scottish ancestry. I should know. She's 100% on.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Oh wow, that's great. Um, so anything else you want to talk about before you move on to your next topic? Because I know we've talked about pumpkin pie, a little bit about Halloween,
A
a
little bit
little
about
about
apples.
yeah, we talked a little bit about apples. Um, we talked about Bobby, but excuse me, bobbing for apples. Uh, there we go. Uh, and one of the other things too was you said that was what was the tradition with Bobby? It was in Roman times. You said. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, the apple tradition started from Roman times,
Yeah,
but also from Samhain, and
yeah.
the bobbing tradition started. This was more of a Celtic thing that you would all go down into the water together, and the first person out would be the first person to get married. And at that time,
Oh,
everybody
gotcha.
was looking for their partner.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
would hope to get married so that you would have a family and you could work on your farm or your business together and things like that.
yeah, yeah. And those are just things that could kind of get lost in time that people kind of forget about. We just think it's like something to do, just to waste people's time around the Halloween party or
Well,
whatever.
I
Yeah,
never understood why it was a game.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know that it was a divination form until years
Mm.
later.
Yeah,
Many
right?
years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I love history. That's why I love history. By the way, in college, I went bobbing for beers, Rissa. It didn't really work out, to be honest with you. You just
And I
hurt
was
your
like,
teeth.
how did that go with the
Nah,
teeth?
yeah, it didn't work out. It was, look, when you're drunk and you're in your 20, like 19, 20, yeah, you don't make the greatest decisions.
Yeah.
Um, but yes,
Yeah. I
if
can't say
anyone's
I've
done
ever done that. I've never tried that, John.
well, now you got Halloween bobbing for beers. Don't use glass, people. Use aluminum, but that's still probably a bad idea. But anyway, probably apples. Let's just stick with apples with the
Apples
beer
might be
thing.
better. You could even use these.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be cute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You wouldn't have to go to the dentist the next day with missing teeth. Uh, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Um, so we have a question
Hmm.
about, and you don't have to give it. Don't give this away, please. Someone says, "Do you live near Salem?" And I'm
No,
like,
I do not
"Well,
live near
okay,
Salem. I
all
live in
right,
the Mid Atlantic. I have been to Salem many times. I have spoken at conferences in Salem. It's a great town and it is a fabulous place to visit. It is a little bit busy to visit in October unless
I
you really
bet,
enjoy that.
I
I know there
bet,
are people who love to be with big festival crowds and things like that. I'm not one of them. I did make the decision to go one year with a friend in October, and we were
yeah,
shoulder to shoulder with people just walking down the street. Um, I've gone
wow,
other times of year, and it's more open, and you can access the stores and the cafes and the museums much more easily. If
yeah,
any of your listeners want to go and they really want to be there during spooky time, my best suggestion: plan way ahead. Like if you think you want to take a ghost tour, buy your tickets months ahead. Otherwise,
yeah,
you're just not going to get in.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. The person says they went around Halloween. It was a nightmare. Not I don't. They're probably saying nightmare in the sense of like
Not in a
it
good
was
way.
yeah, not in a good way, like nightmare, even though the nightmare would be good. Yeah, and no, they were like one thing that they said. they were saying too, they still believe the witches got burned like
No, that's
before they
not
went
correct.
there. Yeah, that's correct.
No,
In what was it? In Europe, they burned the witches.
correct.
In America, they hung the witches. That is correct, or am I
So in Salem, one man was pressed to death with rocks,
right?
and the
Yeah.
other women were hanged,
Mm,
and two dogs were hanged as well as
mm,
witches. So
oh, wow.
yeah, America did not
Jeez.
have the tradition of burning. Even other states that executed witches, they were hanged. So yeah, anybody saying that about Salem, they actually, there was a TV show called Salem, and they were burning
Yeah.
witches in the show. It was
Right.
literally, there were so many things in that show that were historically inaccurate, but I mean, it was
Yeah.
entertaining. It was just completely
Sure.
fictionalized. So
Yeah.
it's
Uh,
important to understand the distinction between something that's entertainment and something that's actually historic. Yes, Europe absolutely burned witches. They did hang them as well, but lots of unfortunately people died horrific deaths by being burned to death.
yeah. Yeah. And I have not been there. It's on my bucket list to go. But I've seen things where they actually have the benches. Is it
Yes,
benches
it
to
is
the young
it's a
women?
memorial.
Yeah.
I
Right.
have never
Okay.
personally sat on them.
Okay.
To me it feels more like a memorial. Like I would never
Yeah.
sit on
Yeah.
somebody's gravestone either. But a lot of those women and the gentlemen that died there, their bodies were just, they were not buried in a respectful manner. Some of them were like
Mm,
tossed in ditches or other places, and it is tragic the way things went down because it was really a hysteria. It
yeah.
was very little to do with witchcraft and a whole lot to do with hysteria.
Yeah.
And uh, I have seen people sit on them, and I understand when you're walking around as a tourist and you're very tired. But
Right.
I personally would never sit on somebody's memorial bench or stone. Their names are on them, and a lot of people will leave
Mm,
flowers or herbs or coins or jewelry or other offerings to the individual. Um, I don't want to say witches because I don't think many of them
yeah.
were,
Yeah.
to the
Right.
individuals that the memorial is placed for.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sorry to get off on that tangent, but
Oh no,
that's
I
just
we were good. I can actually speak about it, so we're good. You didn't
yeah.
catch me off
Yeah.
guard.
Because if you are in her area, remember Rissa does ghost tours, correct?
I do.
Or
I do ghost tours. I do all kinds of lectures and workshops, and yeah, absolutely. I'm in
yeah.
the um, I'm in the Baltimore metropolitan area. That's the closest big city to where I am. But I
Okay.
do work in both Pennsylvania and Maryland. Sometimes all the way over as far as New Jersey. Sometimes, I mean, I do travel all over the country speaking. But
Yeah.
that's my core area.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things around your area is obviously there's a lot of history, there's a
Mhm.
lot of things dealing with traditions and other things like that. In the Midwest, believe it or not, there are up north we do have we didn't I don't know if you again we don't like to use witches but more like druids, so like up
Yeah.
in Door County, which I've been several times, they have many festivals which are going on right now. By the way, same thing, if you're going if you're listening to this and you're in the Midwest and you want to go to that, it's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful area, but you're shoulder to shoulder, arm to arm. Everything's booked. Forget it. You're not getting in. You got to book a year in advance. But they have like a little tribute to druids and the magic because it's a very magical place up in Door County. I'd highly recommend Rissa if you ever have the time
Okay.
and you would like to go there.
Yeah.
Definitely reach out to me. I'll point you in the right direction. My favorite place in there is this area that is a part of the port area, which is called Death's Door. And the reason it's called Death's Door was because when um, different ships and stuff were coming in, they would smash in the rocks, they would smash in the fallen trees in the water, and hundreds of people died in that
Oh.
area. Yeah, yeah. and that's why they call it Death's Door, because they didn't have a lighthouse until later. And but yeah, if you went in that, it was notoriously bad. Of course, people blamed it on witches and warlocks and saying that they're angry because they're disturbing their area or
Right,
something. But you
right,
got to remember, this is 1700s,
of
1800s,
course.
where everybody was looking through that. But it's an absolutely gorgeous area. Like I said, you go online, look at Door County and all the different things. But remember, folks, it's shoulder to shoulder, booked up. It's expensive, but it's worth a try once in a while. So yeah,
Very cool. Yeah, I never heard that story before. I mean, it is a very dark piece of history you shared, but I totally, I get it
yeah,
and I appreciate it.
yeah. And they have ghost ships. The same old, same old. They have ghost ships. Many ghosts in the area. There are areas in there where like sailors used to stay, in the lighthouses, obviously, and everything for maybe a year and switch out. But there's an island, like all the lighthouses are haunted. There's this one area that I told on one of my episodes that there were these Coast Guard guys. They have to, modern day Coast Guard guys had to stay at this one lighthouse because they were doing some renovations and doing some other things. And they left in the middle of the night and got in their boat and got the hell out of there. And when
Wow.
their commander was asking, like, what are you guys doing? Come on. They're like, we're not going back. Supposedly, they saw a headless woman. They
Ooh.
saw like a ghost dog. They saw like numerous things. And they were like, nope, we're not going back. We're out. And this area now is when you go on a boat tour past it, people, unfortunately, it's like the birds and Alfred Hitchcock,
Yeah.
and the birds have descended and taken over this island.
Uh,
And so there's, well, I can't any other way to say it than bird shit everywhere. It's terrible. It looks like out of Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds. And when you go
right.
by it, yeah, they have to put in every year they have to put on like hazmat suits and go on the island, clean everything up, and it's crazy. It's
Oh
just
my
really weird. Like
gosh.
it's all boarded up now, and people don't go to it. So it's
Wow.
really really crazy place you check out.
Well, as our time is drawing thinner, I will wrap up some of the ideas we had to talk about. The last one is that Halloween is a thin time. And I did talk about that a little bit when we got started. A thin time is when the spirit world is closer to the living. And this comes from the Samhain tradition of how their festival worked and ancestors and other spirits, maybe not all ancestors, also being nearby during this time. And it makes it that Halloween is a really prevalent time for divination. Now, Samhain actually falls halfway between the equinox and the solstice. So there are farming reasons that these holidays were placed where they were. Basically, all society was agricultural. So it really mattered to keep track of these things, like when is the ground going to freeze? When do the crops have to be brought in? But as it got cold, as the earth seemed to die, it sort of brought forward this idea of death and being able to speak to spirits, ancestors, ghosts, whatever word you like to use, became attached to this time of year for that reason. So I am also a diviner, as you know, and I do readings, and I do have my tarot cards along. This is a really traditional tarot deck I have with me tonight. I did grab the other one I like to use this time of year. It's called the Cute Ghost deck. Um, honestly, I'm always here for a cute ghost, but I like to show off how cute that is, especially around this time of year. But I mean, tarot isn't necessarily a thing that's associated with Halloween, except that it's a tool for divination. And I think one of the best things about it is how people find it really extra spooky to get a tarot deck out this time of year. Whereas, to someone like me, it's a tool I use all year long. But tarot itself comes from Italy. It was born in the 1400s, and it wasn't used for divination until the 1700s, when the spiritualist movement hit and divination became a more normalized thing in Europe. So at that point, both scholars and the Roma started using tarot decks for divination. Now, I'm holding a tarot deck that I'm sure a lot of your listeners are trying to find one of the more common cards. I'm holding a deck in my hand. Ah, here we go. Here's the death card. This is the tarot deck called the Rider Waite, but it was actually created. The artwork was created. It's so iconic by Pamela Coleman Smith. So a woman of color, no less, created these really iconic images that we all think of as the tarot. Because before her, the tarot cards didn't really look like this. There weren't faces on all of the cards the way there are now. And this is pretty much how all people picture the tarot. This is my favorite card, the Wheel of Fortune. I love it. I love seeing it in somebody's reading. I'm looking for like the devil or something like that to show because, people always are fascinated by some of these cards, and their meanings honestly aren't what you might expect. This is the moon card from the Pamela Coleman Smith artwork. And, I probably dropped the devil on the floor because I just dropped a bunch of them. Oh,
Uh-oh.
now here he is. Here's the devil.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, these cards are the most copied cards as far as tarot goes. This cute ghost deck, actually, it's the same style of artwork, but with cute ghosts.
Oh,
Okay.
cute.
Aren't they cute? I love
They're
these.
cute.
Yeah. Yeah. Here you might be able to see this one better.
Love it.
But yeah, it's basically the Coleman Smith deck, but with cute ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
So more people are familiar with this kind of tarot card than any of the others, the old ones. So the old ones probably wouldn't even look familiar to a lot of people who read tarot. It's fascinating. So
Yeah.
yes, is the tarot spooky? I am not personally scared by paper, but if you are, you might
Yeah.
find it terrifying. This is just a set of cards. They're just a tool. I know there's a new movie out this year called Tarot, and the cards come to life and kill people. It's entertaining. It's fun. It'd be a great Halloween movie, to be totally honest. The effects,
Yeah.
I thought the effects were really good, and it's not the best as far as like plot goes. You kind of know what's coming the whole time, but it is
Yeah.
fun. I'm here to tell you, I've been reading tarot for a very long time, and it's a family tradition for me. It's never happened that one of my cards came to life and tried to kill me. I think the most dangerous thing that could happen with tarot is maybe a paper cut. So, but yeah,
So,
divination is part of Halloween. With the ancient Samhain celebrations, it would have looked more like smoke scrying or fire scrying, uh, pyromancy, gazing into fire or the embers to look for messages. And I think that's absolutely fascinating and not done very often anymore, but still doable, still totally a doable thing. If somebody knows scrying, you could scry with anything. So like I'm a tea leaf reader. I can also scry in smoke or water because I know how to do it. But all of that said, I know our time is winding down and I don't want to keep your listeners on too late. Um, I think that divination is a really fun part of Halloween and a super old traditional part as well. So, if wherever you are and you're listening, if you want to partake in that old tradition, go for it. Find someone local to you or someone online that can give you whatever kind of reading you like and make it part of your Halloween lore.
so really quickly, because you also, before we wrap up here, you have, before you get to your contest, because you mentioned that you texted me, you want to talk a little bit about that, but really
Yeah.
quickly, someone just had a question,
Uh-huh.
like with tarot reading,
Yeah.
is it any different from like Ouija board? Meaning, I think what they mean is like Ouija board, you've heard some really horrible stories of things have gone wrong, right? Is that similar to tarot? If you maybe if you read something
Okay.
wrong, or I don't, I'm not sure if
So
that's
the
the
Ouija
right
board was
terminology.
invented in Baltimore and it was patented by a man named Elijah Bond, who was a lawyer, not a spiritualist.
Mm.
And the Ouija board was always designed to be profitable. And the Ouija board was kind of considered a joke among seers until 1973.
Mm.
1973 is the year The Exorcist comes out.
Okay.
Now, The Exorcist was based on a true story, but let's say a true-ish story. The child in The Exorcist is a little girl, and it's set in Washington D.C. The real story was in St. Louis, and it was a little boy. There was no Ouija board involved in the actual exorcism. The director threw it in at the last minute, uh, just as a prop to make it cool.
Mm.
Ever since then, people have approached the Ouija board with a different intention.
Mm.
So I'm here to tell you that bad things can happen and you can conjure things you don't want with anything.
Mm.
You don't need a Ouija
Oh,
board to do it. You don't even need a tarot
okay.
deck. If you call into the void for something bad to come get you,
Yeah.
that's all
Right.
you need to do.
Okay.
Quite
Okay.
honestly, I'm not superstitious about Ouija boards. I know their history, I understand how these stories started, but I also understand intention. So
Yeah.
you have to have the right intentions. You have to have good boundaries, whether you're working with the
Hmm.
spirit world or real people. And either way, what you're putting out there matters. I
Yeah.
hope this answers your listener's question.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It looks like they said yeah. I think what they were saying was if I buy a tarot deck and like am I like reading it and I forget like with with the Ouija board you have to say goodbye and you know what I mean, close it and stuff. Like
Right.
if they I don't know if they're thinking like, "Oh, I got the tarot cards and I was reading them and then I just kind of just put them on my dresser and went to bed and they're
I
going to
usually clear my decks.
Oh,
I
okay.
do. I store them with. Well, I store one of my. I store my main reading deck. This one. I store this with this piece of copper. A friend made
Oh,
this for me.
nice.
It's called a triskel, and I use the energy of the copper and the intention of the gift to help clear and keep the deck. Other
Okay.
people use crystals or sage. There are lots of ways to clear your deck and to sort of keep it unattached to things.
Okay. I think that's awesome. That's exactly what we know. So, wrapping up here, Rissa, you have a contest? I was just looking at my notes
Yes.
here on my phone. Yeah, so let's
So
talk about that.
as soon as we hang up, a friend of mine named Casey Fallon, who is an author, she's written two sets of horror short stories. I have the first one in my hand. This one is based in America, and her new one is based in Ireland, where she recently spent some time. And our contest is for folks to find both her and I on social media, and we're calling it a spectacular trio because I'm going to give a free tarot reading to the winner, and the winner also gets a copy of both of her books. So
Mm,
it's a cool contest, and if your listeners like reading scary stories or want a tarot reading from me, this is a great opportunity to make those things happen. And like I said, on my social media and on Casey's, we'll launch it as soon as you and I are done here.
awesome. Awesome. So, thank you so much, Rissa.
Of course,
Again, I
it's always
love
a pleasure, John. I'd happily come back whenever you
Oh,
want me.
I I'm definitely gonna have you back on. We haven't got to some other things we've talked about. But again, like stay safe. If you do have questions about scrying or tarot reading or obviously this contest, please get involved in. Please read, it's okay, right, Rissa? Even if it's a dumb question, there's no dumb question. Come on, let's just
No
reach
dumb
out.
questions. Of course not.
Yeah, yeah. Just reach out to Rissa and ask her. And if you're in her area, and I don't know if you're already booked up, you probably are. But if you're not, please go on a tour with Rissa. She has a great history of the area, and she will definitely bring up some things like apple pie's European, and she doesn't like whipped cream on her pumpkin pie. So that's so. Thank you so much, Rissa. This
Thank
was
you,
amazing
John.
again. And we'll talk later.
Thank
Bye
you so
bye.
much.
Bye bye.